Maybe they can buy a BBC car and they get into the car and they hear the news through the car system and they talk to the car. The idea of the model of platform, a website that tries content and you read this content, that's probably the most challenging and the most uncertainty for the next 10 years.
Haven't heard about a BBC News car? Well, it doesn't exist yet, but it might be one of the ways people will get their news in the future. In this episode, we discuss even crazier scenarios of news consumption with Mariano Blejman, an Argentinian media entrepreneur and the founder of the Media Party Festival in Buenos Aires. Mariano heightened my fascination with neuroscience and how its findings can be used to understand audience behavior and information consumption patterns. I started this conversation by asking Mariano what fascinates him personally about generative AI.
So my point of view related with AI is that we are in a fascinating moment to create stories. I know that the ecosystem of business of news is pretty broken, but the ecosystem of creating stories and understanding how people react to these stories is unique. I mean, we've never been in this situation, and the way that this is moving forward very quickly, it creates a lot of opportunities. So, from my point of view, the most compelling part of what I see or what I want to do or what I see as experiments worldwide or people thinking, the most interesting part of me is all this process of creating stories, and there is no boundaries about what is possible to be done and how people is adopting and ourselves adopting technology to create stories, even in a visual way or in a fluid way. We have tools and knowledge or audience understandings that makes a unique opportunity.
When I talk to younger journalists and older journalists, so this is one of the few things that are kind of the same when I ask them about their thoughts and feelings about the AI and the understanding. A lot of people say that they have some sort of fear and anxiety as well because it's so uncertain that they don't know how it will change journalism as profession, as industry, whether it will take their jobs or will not take their jobs. A lot of questions. Anything challenging or even kind of scary for you?
Sure, I had the chance to be part of the AI for Journalists workshop that the Open Society organization did in Italy in April, and the process to be selected to be in that workshop was to propose an scenario. So my proposal was how journalists would look like in 15 years. And so my proposal was to start developing something that I call synthetic democracies, which is basically if we are getting used to this creation of content that it's impossible for us to understand what is real and what is not real. Maybe we're getting into the first step to create synthetic democracies, which is meaning we have no idea what we are voting is real or not, right? So in terms of understanding the role of humankind, the humankind in society, it's basically the cognitive independence is something really interesting for me. Like why we are choosing the content that we're choosing, is someone manipulating us in a way that we never thought that this was going to be possible. And the lack of tools to talk about this and to discuss about this. And I think the main problem that journalists have right now is the narcissist problem, right? So what's are gonna we be doing in this world where everything is produced automatically? So that's the main problem. But it's also an opportunity, right? Because if let's say that the water is something that will be scarce, right? It's gonna be problem of water, etc. So maybe the problem of truth is gonna be also as scarce as water, right? So we don't know what's real and what is not real. So the truth is starting to create a value. So that's where I see a big role for journalism, for journalist organizations, and for communities around content.
It's interesting point. So you think that people will trust journalists? I mean, you're aware of many research and Reuters Institute's research that how people actually the trust to many institutions, including media, really now sharply declined. And when I talk to people in any part of the world, and especially those people who are not journalists, the first thing which comes up to them once they say we don't trust, they say we don't trust media, we don't trust journalists. Why would they trust us?
Yeah, exactly. Let's try to divide the conversation between I have more holistic approach. Like there is people in the society, people need to get information about what's going on. The end state of this funnel is go to vote, at least in some countries, right? You know what's going on, you have an emotion, and you go to vote. So right, but how people go through this flow is less and less intermediated by newsroom, by the traditional legacy newsroom and the traditional workflow. People get information in social networks, they get information in TikTok. I mean, that's the trends is there. The decline of trusting media is because of media is not doing their job in a proper way. And also because the economic system, the business model system for media is broken, right? So that's a combination of changing how people behavior is, but also the drivers that are changing society are making that this legacy business model is gonna die, right? So going back to your question about why people will trust in media, what I will say is that people will trust in the people they trust, and you create trust with people with a lot of time of like an ethics of processes, an ethic of workflows, an ethic of things that keep you validating that what you're telling it has a sense of authority because it looks like something that is real. The problem is that we are getting into the phase where we are not going to be able to know what is real and what is not. So there are two paths that we think that are possible there. So one is we are going to be 100% manipulated people. We have no idea what we are reading and listening. We will have headphones that can predict behavior, energy in the brain, so we can push people to more anger, etc. The other potential flow, and those can be both at the same time, is that people stop to believe in anything. They're assuming that everything is fake, and you have to earn the trust, right? As a media producer, someone that want to inform what's going on, right? So that's kind of become a combination, but it's also a pattern that we see in this process of forward thinking. Like if we go to this direction, we are 100% true. There are going to be a couple of companies that is going to manipulate our world, but at the same point, it might be a reaction that say, let's unplug everything. Let's start from the beginning. I do not trust of anything, which is something that you are saying that is happening in the reports. And let's build communities and new relationships, and also new places where to connect because people maybe it's not going to the former websites, etc. And maybe they can buy a BBC car and they get into the car and they hear the news through the car system and they talk to the car. The idea of the model of platform, a website that tries content and you read this content, that's probably the most challenging and the most uncertainty for the next 10 years.
So you said about yourself that you always were kind of a geeky journalist, a nerdy journalist. So you were interested in the nation of storytelling and tech. So how would you describe the idea behind your business project, SmartStory.ai? What are you trying to achieve with it?
Yeah, we can wait a lot of time on audience teams across different markets, 10, 12 years trying to understand how to connect with audiences, how to make more compelling stories. And we know from several factors that people are predictable. So there are certain people that will react for a certain situation in a certain way, right? So the first step was try to figure out what's the best way to make more relevant the audience team in the newsrooms, or how can they give insights to the newsrooms on what is working and what is not working, etc. And we found that most of the tool there was a lot of very good data analytic tools, and newsroom has this process of doing audience meeting, etc. But there is a lot of information that disappeared from one week to another, and we thought that it should be a way to give these insights to the audience, which is I'm going to write the story and what are the possibilities that this story are going to perform well, starting with the headlines, the content, images, videos, etc. But then that's the first step, and then we think that there is a field not only about looking for data, but trying to understand behavior of people in news consumption, right? So that's just really preliminary, but I think that the roadmap of what we're doing is more related also with this kind of neuroscience work, which is been not very developed in the news industry, but it's strongly developed in marketing, political marketing.
So let's say I am a small media organization. I'm a niche website, right? And I come to you and I ask you, okay, guys, help me to understand my audience, my niche audience better. What exactly are you helping me with? You're helping me to ABC testing my headlines or the whole content. What are you helping me with?
There are patterns in the past that can predict how people will react to a new content. And that's a still in every market, in every niche. You need to understand what is your previous corpus of knowledge, and then you can create a model that says basically I'm writing this headline of this story, and this story is going to perform well or bad according to my previous actions and the actual trends that are around. That's the basic stuff, but the core of the mission is how can we use this AI war, and how can we use human behavior to understand and predict the performance. Something that we discover in a lot of newspapers is that, for example, for the 100% of articles that the newsroom create every day, 50% of these articles create the 90% of the traffic, and the other 50% of the articles, mainly through the headlines, create the 10% of less of the traffic.
We called it at the BBC, we called it 80/20. So basically, 20% of content attracted 80% of traffic. But again, what about public service? If you're a public broadcaster or public news organization, right? When you're not driven by commercial interest, but you're driven by public interest.
Yeah, that's the Pareto's law, whatever. But what I'm trying is a slightly different. It's like you can know, you can predict that this 50% of this content, it is not going to be relevant for the audience. Then we can discuss about what does it means in terms of relevance, what does it mean in terms of social service, etc., etc. One more thing regarding that is that so we started thinking on the actual problems, like what are the actual problems with the actual newsrooms, with the audience team. So the world that we know, and how can we give these elements for newsroom to improve their work, but also I think that the next step of what we are doing, which is still very early, is to understand more deeply the human behavior behind news consumption, right? And how the stories are affecting the the emotions, the adrenaline, all these things related with the neuroscience work. And I think that in that path, there is a way to start creating these AI agents that can help not only to give insights for the actual editors, but can have also different relationship with readers, right? So how can you encourage readers to read outside the bubble, etc.?
I'm trying to understand. So I am a reader. I come to your website. You are a small digital organization. I like your site. I come from time to time to your website, so I read it. Sometimes I feel like amazing. You enlighten me, or you explain me certain things. Sometimes I feel, oh my God, what a rubbish. They just so. But are you trying to manipulate my feelings, my emotions as a reader? By predicting my emotions, what does it give you as a content creator? If, let's say, if you see that more of your readers become um, upset and leave your website or scroll or something, apart from that, you need to be more relevant, or you need to write in a better way, or not to write, maybe to do video and stuff like this. What I still can't. What exactly you're doing?
And Marie Dooling, I don't know if you know her. She's a vice president of audience of Gannett. It's used today, I think. She started the last 4 years. We bring her to Media Party because I discovered that she was one of the few people in the world that was starting to use neuroscience, the neuroscience field, adapted to to news consumption, right? So, for example, there are a lot of paper. There are a couple of papers, not a lot, a couple of papers that says that people who are more happiest and reading news for the products or the quality of the content, etc. They have a tendency to remember better what they're reading. So that's one. Like if you do have a good experience, if the product is pretty good, also the content is quality, and you can predict that this quality content is going to perform and make your audience happy, it's a big asset to have. So that's a very developed field in the politics in the opposite way, which is basically creating anger of people to engage more and to go to vote anger, etc. And that's a process that ends with crazy governments worldwide. So as an industry, I think that we never took serious the idea of understanding behavior and emotions behind the news consumptions. Marketing and politics has a strong developed field on there, and they are very effective. So that kind of problems that we're trying to work on. So right now, our tool is very simple and it's doing something very simple, which is basically if you are an editor and you want to write a story, once you start writing, the system, this is Google Chrome extension. It tells you, okay, this article is going to work or it's not going to work, and that's it has like an 80% of precision. So it means that you can have a sense of there might be better ways to write what you're writing. So that's the small thing that we have right now that we're using with the media outlets across Latin America and some US Hispanic right now. But the flow of what we are thinking is much more in that direction of understanding behavior.
I'm curious, Mariano, can you share with me a recent example of how a newsroom you worked with solved an issue with the help of an AI tool? And an issue, I mean, storytelling related or maybe audience engagement related, whatever they had an issue in the newsroom, they could not solve it, but an AI tool helped them to resolve it.
I work in a project. So, for example, we had two TV stations with 60 years of images and videos. The tools available in the field for AI archive, headline detections and tying were not trained for this market. So it was very hard for any company in Latin America to use these tools because basically these tools were not trained for this market. So one thing that we did with the support from Google challenge was we need to create the baselines of understanding the political landscape in Latin America, and we need to train that so other media companies in the field can use this technology. It's also a kind of war of compensating the bias. Like most of these models are trained by white people in the Silicon Valley or whatever, and basically we were saying we need to train this model to understand our audience. So now there are a couple of archives that are much more sharp in terms of understanding Latin American audience. So that's one thing that is interesting. There are a lot of things doing. La Nación in Argentina is doing a great job in different fields. For example, they took all this Venezuela process of elections. They put all this information in an engine to understand the patterns of what was happening, etc. So I think in terms of workflows, I plenty of examples of the how these things are very useful. Those are two main cases.
I was wondering, Mariana, so what are your observations in terms of access journalists in Argentina and in some other Latin American countries have to AI? Because we are saying that AI, will make might create more equality, but it also might create more inequality. Because what I observe, let's say in some African countries or even in the Middle East, people do not have the same access and the same resources that newsrooms in Europe or in the US. How about Argentina?
It's always going to be the division between rich and poor is always going to be the division of the speed and access, and that's a hard thing to do. Having said that, I think that there are a lot of tools that are helping people to create content and also to make this workflow much more faster. My perception is that there are a lot of opportunities for early stage companies to to access to these tools. What we've seen the last 2 years, I organized two media parties last year, two media parties this year. We did also a media party university talking with the students, etc. So we detected a lot of ideas, tools, and projects worldwide trying to solve different issues related with news. And what we see now is that the speed of the process of creating tools that go to production in a day are incredible. So 3 years ago, we were trying to create something. We had these hacking days, nothing finished in an afternoon, in 2 days. Now, in an afternoon, even no skilled people, technical skilled people, can build stuff very quickly. And that's a huge difference because I think that related with the role of journalism in society, I think that journalists has a lot of good ideas. They understand the value of the data and the stories, and one of the lack in the ecosystem is that they usually never had help to make these stories happen because they need to hire very expensive developers. And now this is shifting very quickly. And the thing that some people in the industry say is that we are in the moment where the news industry was 30 years ago when internet showed up, but the same moment is going to happen for the tech industry and for the developers right now. In the next 3 or 5 years, the way of creating stuff is going to change radically. So my point of view is that the core business, which is for journalists to tell stories, to understand what's going on, the agency of journalists to create stories and to connect the dots and to make products relating with that are going to be way faster because journalists has this mission, his sense like, okay, something is wrong here. Let's try to figure out how can we make it work better. And the tech industry is usually like more focusing on in love with technology more than the problems that they are trying to solve.
Do you see any kind of mistakes or common misconception of AI and storytelling among the journalists?
Yeah, the main misconception is that there is a love. Yeah, it's a love with the tools. They are in love with tools. The most of people in the field, journalists, but not only journalists, assume that everything that is coming from a machine must be right. So it's like or it's helpful at some point. We saw that process when we started working with big corporations here regarding AI and headline suggestions and headline prediction. The reception of some newsrooms was okay, but now it's a tool that's going to tell me if the headline is right or it's not right. So it's no longer my responsibility. You cannot fire me because of that, right? Because it's not me. You tell me to use this tool and this tool is not working. So that's the kind of, who is the responsibility for the decisions. And I think that more and more, a lot of newsrooms are delivering these decisions to the tools because they are assuming that there is a crazy magic behind that. And they have to take that for granted. And that's big mistake.
Mariana, so you go to, you give workshops, you go to different conferences as well. So you do meet journalists from different newsrooms, different countries, and all that. What are the questions that we are not asking about AI and the aspects of the issue that we are not thinking about? Because we talk now a lot about AI. It's sexy, trendy, fashionable even. So none of the conferences, journalism conferences goes without AI subject in it. But what are the questions we're actually missing or maybe we're avoiding to ask ourselves? And they're important.
Yeah, my perception regarding that question is that a lot of maybe most of the efforts in terms of using AI are to try to solve the actual business model. So it's like, how can we do more articles? How can we do? But audience is reacting differently. The relationship with big audience with content is completely different. We know for sure that people is searching things on TikTok more than TikTok search news consumption is growing a lot. This piece of content are creating a relationship with the audience that is incredible. So the kind of anger in some point that create the audio visual content in TikTok create an effect in the brain of people that is not it's not going to go back to the previous mindset. So it's like it's creating connections in the brain in an anger level, but it's not going to slow down. So even if you stop using the phone for a period of time, your brain will stay radical in terms of just consumption. So I think for what I see with all this journalism AI and all the projects and all the workshops and the hackathons that we did across Latin America, I am more interested into new solutions for a new world on how people get consume news rather than trying to, let's try to save paper, right? We cannot save paper. People will not, it's not going to be a massive adoption of paper anymore, period, right? Even I think that it's not going to be a massive adoption of websites anymore. I think that the drastic change that is coming is related with the product where people get information.
What is your prediction? People don't go to the website, people don't use the app, they go directly to AI companion, AI secretary.
Yeah, probably the content will flow to users without even asking. So it's like something that we discussed in May. I was to the News Product Alliance Summit in New York, and we started to sing in some of this process, and we came up with this idea. So far, we have been using the prompts, so we are thinking that we are asking the questions to the tools, so the tools come back to us. But what if there is a way where tools can predict behavior and say, okay, these people needs to know more about something. Let's push with information regarding that issue. So it's your behavior that activate the prompt, and it's not you asking for the prompt. So what I'm saying regarding that is that there is a misconception that look very arrogant, but it's a misconception that these tools have to fix the actual business model, and this is not going to happen.
One of the most interesting aspects of the different discussions around AI for me is kind of creativity versus meaning. So, yes, at least in my life, I see how different tools can spark my creativity. But what about meaning? What about meaningful texts? There was a really good, I mean, it's just one of the articles, but it's really stuck with me in The New Yorker by Ted Chiang. And he says, it's fundamentally dehumanizing technology because it treats us humans as less than what we are, creators and apprehenders of meaning. It reduces the amount of intention in the world. What is your view? Do you see it like this, that it's dehumanizing and just recycles and doesn't create any new meaning? Or you see it differently?
I wrote my thesis in 1998, about the privacy and internet. So I like a law old legacy dinosaur of internet. I have been always in the field being very critic about the political process and how corporations are taking control of humanity. But at the same time, I think that the opportunities are inside also. I do not like the idea of being an outsider dropping rocks, right? It's more like what can we do about it? So what's our main solutions worldwide that are trying to fix this thing? So let's think on Linux Foundation. So it's 70% of the websites are running under an open source. So my point of view is that there is a big opportunity to do crazy stuff inside technology, that the openness also create a lot of opportunities and eventually end winning the war. I like to think that I understand the problems that technology are addressing to society, but I want to do something about it. So I don't, and I think that there are a lot of things and tensions internally that can be address it. Let me tell you two examples of things how people are using technology to address their problems. So one is one project that we bring from Venezuela to Media Party, New York, and it's called Retweet Operation. It's basically they created avatars, journalist avatars, to avoid the censorship. So journalists approach talking about what's going on in Venezuela and the region. But instead of putting real people, they created the avatars. And why they created avatar? Because it's the best way to connect with people, right? You need to see someone to interact with someone. And that's a way to avoid censorship. It doesn't mean that they are lying. Actually, it's the opposite. But they are using these technologies to create compelling stories and to reach audiences. Another project that I also saw regarding that, which is basically using this AI synthetic media as to work as an illustration, right? They are not telling you this is real. They are telling you this is how we think this happened. They are using also these, generative AI images, videos, etc., to tell stories about dictatorship in the 70s. What happened? What was this person? It's impossible to recreate that because there are not images. So instead of doing a documentary or a fiction, which is very expensive, they use this tool to create the images.
Do you feel that we as journalists have any agency to influence the way AI is transforming our profession and industry? And what should be done for us to have more agency?
Look, a lot of things that we do are going in that field. Another story in 2023 in Chicago, we did the first media part in Chicago, and we bring these people from Hugging Face, which is a very powerful platform for open AI, for open LLM models. So it's a huge French Canadian company has been doing a lot of good work in terms of openness on AI. We bring them to Media Party with a lot of effort because it was hard to bring them at that point. Vox Media founder Trey Rondet was in the same room. So we have them all together. And one guy was talking bad things to the other, and the other was talking about bad things about the media industry that they have no idea what's going on. And they suddenly were in the same room and they start talking, and the new relationships show up, etc. So I think that it's not one journalist that can solve anything, but I think that there are a lot of bridges that the industry should put together and have a serious discussion about how this is impacting. Google, for example, from the very beginning, they have a strong strategy with the industry that has shifted and changed over the years, but they open the conversation, they open the bridges, and some things happen.
Do you feel the same now about OpenAI?
No, no, I think that they are. No, I mean that's the word that is coming that the media industry does not realize, and that's an opportunity to act differently of how they acted with Google, etc. Because 70% of the models that are created to OpenAI are from content created by news organizations. So the new war that is coming is related with who owns the actual data and who owns the data that is coming from now. Because what is going to happen now is that we are getting into a new war, which is we call the mad cow war, right? Because the cows that eat meat get crazy, AI that eat AI get crazy, right? So if you create models with content created by AI, the precisions that's proved this precision broke. So the original content, the stories created by people, the real ideas, etc. That those has an incredible value, and the industry. I mean, they are starting to see that, but it's also an opportunity for the media organizations to put their content and the legacy content in value. I think that that's the word that is coming, and it's going to be hard for media organizations fight if they don't do that together.
Mariano, do you have a personal life hack for journalists and storytellers regarding using AI and advice you could give to yourself?
I am 48 years old, so I'm getting into the moment where I'm starting to think if I had these tools 20 years ago, I should have a lot of fun. And that's one of the reasons that we went to the universities and we started to talk with the students and say, let's start thinking on this from the scratch. Because when you are in the studying process on the early stage of your career, I mean, you have to experiment, you have to explore. And we see things built in a very, very fast way. Being curious about what's possible, do not think that this is not going to happen. We have this sentence in media party that say here is not possible to say that this is not possible because everything that we saw that I mean Black Mirror Netflix session I mean we when they launched that it was okay, that's cool, but how do we know? And now it's like literally everything is there. So I think that the most interesting thing for the journalist work is like create the mindset of constant curiosity and do not think that this is not happening. So if for Mariano in 30 years ago, I would say, Mariano, do not think that this is not going to happen. Think that this is going to happen. Embrace what you can and think on how you can resist. I'm sure that we are getting into a very uncertain world. I'm sure that it can happen that we stop trusting in anything, and as we stop trusting anything, we will need to choose who to trust.
Trust is a huge issue, so I would love to maybe discuss it with you one day separately. 3, 4 blitz questions. Short question, and I would like you to answer Without thinking too much, just one sentence. What are your three dominant emotions about the rapid development of AI?
Yes, food, excitement. I don't know how that is an emotion, but it's like, let's do something. What is the emotion of let's do something? Curiosity, yeah, probably, yeah. Fear, which is kind of contradictory, yeah.
What is your most exciting AI related project now?
Well, we have something in very early stage. That is, I think that the emotions field is a fascinating field for news consumption. The brain behind news consumption. We have some ideas on how neuroscience can be applied for news consumption. It is developed in the political industry, it's developing, yes, in marketing, as I mentioned. And the fact is that media productions organizations are the most influential tool for decision making process in society. You want more specific? I think that there is a trend that we want to explore, which is related with the how AI can help to avoid the filter bubble. It should be, and that's very provocative thing, but it should be agents trying to, wake people in terms of there are different things to think about.
Do you know, right? We all live in our bubbles, and YouTube or whatever TikTok algorithm work in a way that they give us more of the same, more of me the way I was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an opportunity to create things that break the bubble.
The future of journalism, how would you describe it in three words?
Different, unpredictable, and opportunity.
Can you share with us one name or reason, thought provoking article or research, or you read about the future of AI that made you think and rethink?
Yeah, well, that one that I mentioned regarding how serotonin affects positively this reception, and that's a paper that Anne-Marie Dolin shared on LinkedIn few couple of months ago, and I just clicked into there and I discovered a new world. The most interesting part is that the brain images and these AI models can really read the brain, can read what's going on in the brain, and can give you insights about what people are thinking.
I wonder what you are thinking about our conversation with Mariano Blejman. You can leave your comments on any platform where you're listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode of AI Fluent with me, Ilona Vinogradova, and feel a bit less alone in your newsroom's everyday struggles. This podcast was produced by Love and Films Pro Media Lab. If you would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Share it with your friends and colleagues if you think they might find it useful or inspirational. And if you really like this podcast, review it on your listening app of choice. It will help us to reach more storytellers and make them feel part of a bigger community. I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, take good care of yourself and each other.